Hi, I'm Becca Neeson with Femme Psycho Collab. We are trying to put out some women-centric ZRL recons, and I hope you enjoy. So this week we're talking about Turf and Surf, which is going to be on November 19th. It's the second race in the series, following the TTT last week, and this course is going to be 24.7 kilometers and about 200 meters of elevation. There's been lots of ZRL recons that have already been released, so everybody has great information, and I think Zwift Insider collects them beautifully and lays them out so that they're very easy to read and watch, and I don't want to have to repeat so much that other people have already done. So everybody's already said this is an interesting choice because there's only 2 segments, and the course is not super fascinating. However, I do think it's a great place to find your superpower, either as an individual or as a team. I'm going to walk through them as I play the video and talk about the course points of interest. So I'm going to play. My friend Anya is going to roll through this course as we talk about team tactics, as we talk about the points of interest, as we talk about the point structure for the race. So this is the flat section of the course for the first 8 kilometers. It's pretty pan flat. There are maybe 2 meters up, 2 meters down. Right out of the gates at 0.7 kilometers, we've got the alley sprint. So all these course notes will be available afterwards. I will post them to the description, and you're welcome to use them as you will. So 0.7 kilometers, we hit the alley sprint. The alley sprint is one of the longest segments that is qualified as a sprint, and many sprinters that I've talked to don't like it because it is very long. It also is curvy, so you can see here Anya's going to hit the segment and she's going to go right to left, right to left. This causes a little bit of chaos as you're trying to figure out how close to the finish line you are. You can't even see the banner, and your avatar is not traveling in a straight line. So just keep going. This is one of those places that I think team tactics could come into play if you are trying to go straight from the start banner. So it's 1.1 kilometers. Now you've got the ability to try to jump off the front right out of the gates and maybe time trial it to the beginning of the segment, or you send flyers to have everyone chase, and then you have your sprinters sit in the pack and wait for the starting line to try to either get one of the fastest through the segment. There's only 5 people that will get those points, or first across the line, which is the top 20. So Anya's going to keep going, keep rolling. I'm going to skip a little ahead. I know that lots of people like to see the whole course, and I think that's great. However, I'm not technical enough to do the fast, slow cuts that everybody else does, so all I want to do is help you guys through the race. So I'm going to speed up till we get to the downhill. All right, so we go through the arcade. Now we're going through the tunnel, and we're going to hit the descent right about 8 kilometers. A lot of people like to say that downhills are boring, and downhills are spots to rest. You can rest on the downhills, but here's where I think that superpowers come into play. If you have gravitas, like me, you have to work less hard to stay in a group going downhill than others. And you'll often notice if you're in a group and you kind of slowly roll through the group on the downhills, you might have gravitas. That might be your superpower. And you can use it in one of 2 ways. Either you can use it to get more rest on the downhills and save up for what's to come, or you can try to make a big move on the downhill, and you have to time it right. You have to go from the back of the group to the front of the group, and you have to be aware of what other people are doing, but it can be your superpower, and all you have to do is explore it. this downhill is quite long, and I think it wouldn't be so interesting if it wasn't already a third of the way through the course. It's already 9 kilometers, and the course is only 25 kilometers. So you only have 20 minutes max left if you're an A. If you're a D, you might have close to 40 minutes left, but it's still only 2/3 of the course to go. So use it to best effect. I'm gonna fast forward again. I know, very obnoxious of me, but it's down and then it's flat, and then you're gonna turn onto the island and you're gonna hit a bridge, and this bridge is gonna cut your speed a little bit. So you're coming off the downhill and off the flats where everyone's gonna be going a little faster, and you hit this 3 to 4% grade, and that will slow some of you down. It's also halfway through the course. So again, you only have 13 kilometers left. I'm gonna fast forward again, I know, very naughty. But I'm gonna go up to the I don't know if it's called the Shisa climb, the corkscrew climb, whatever, the climb that leads up to the Shisa sprint. This is probably most interesting to me because it is very draftable. It is only 10 kilometers from the finish line. It leads into a downhill start of the segment. And it's a great place to use group tactics, because if you have sprinters in your group, and every team is comprised of different types of riders, right? You've got your punchers and your rollers and your all-rounders, your TTers, and your sprinters. And points courses we generally think of as for the sprinters, right? This is going to be hard for sprinters because every time you have a significant grade for any significant amount of time, you all have to work a little harder in the pack. And that's hard for sprinters because they want to punch high and they want to rest. They've had a lot of rest since the alley sprint, but once you kick up over 5%, those sprinters still have to work in the pack as hard as everyone else. So if you're trying to protect your sprinter, I would not be pushing on this climb. I would be trying to make sure that the sprinter was still in the group. And also because if you don't help your sprinter stay in the group, by the time you get to the Shisa sprint, they're not going to have any gas. So this climb, we just went through the first half of it, and now Anya's hitting the bridge flattens out. You have a little bit of recovery or a time to press, depending on the strength of your team. And again, that's about your team superpower. What can you guys do? Here's the second part of the climb. It's not very long and it's not that steep, but it is a final press after you've already been pushing for about 1 kilometer. So if you're saving your sprinter, maybe this is where you push and you elongate, you create a long line for the sprinter to go through as they hit the sprint starting line. So you'll see what I mean in a second as Anya goes up and over the cap and then starts to accelerate into the descent. So she's the sprint is coming up in 200 meters here, and she's getting back up to speed. If you have a long line for your sprinter to sprint through, that's a lot easier for them to possibly get fastest through the segment points. And your aero helmet will last almost this entire sprint. It's 0.3 kilometers, pretty flat. However, you're leading into it in a downhill. So Anya just took 26 seconds and she wasn't going fast and she wasn't in a pack. So that power up should last you for a while. You continue to descend here, and I'm gonna again fast forward. I'm sorry. Until we get to the next point of interest, which is right here. 19.8 kilometers. This is not a significant bump, but it is a bump, and it's 0.2 to 0.3 kilometers. It's going to cut your speed a lot because it goes up above 4%. So if you want to make a move and you're not a climbing team, this is a type of place where you might be able to get away. There's about 1.5 kilometers before the Pain Cavern. The Pain Cavern is probably the biggest point of interest that's not a segment on this course. So again, I'm going to fast forward to it. We hit it at about 21.4 kilometers. This climb is 2.2 kilometers long, it is stepped. So stepped means, in my mind, think about your gearing. You either have, ideally, virtual shifting, or you have a lot of gears that you can go through. And you don't want to be changing from your big ring to your small ring or vice versa. And you don't want to be stuck at like 60 RPM on the steep bits, because that can lead into what my friend calls the spiral of death. So don't be there. I'm guilty of that all the time, especially in Bologna. Okay, so you hit these steep bits where you want to be able to spin it out, but also you want to be able to have a harder gear to click into. You could maybe adjust your trainer difficulty if you don't have a significant range that you can use in your 50% trainer difficulty. You could move it up to 70%, for instance, for this race. Really, when you hit these flat bits, you don't want to be slowing down, because in my mind, I think of all of these points of interest as places not to slow down, or to try not to slow down. So maybe get comfortable going at a little higher RPM, 90 to 100 to 110 if you can, so that you don't get stuck in those big gears and get overgeared when you hit the significant grade. So up, flat, and you can see it on the new HUD is great because it shows you everything that you would want to know about your upcoming climbs. So you can see all of these points where there's blue. I would consider it a place to focus on to make sure that you don't lose touch, right? If you're not a climber and you're worried about those points, then make sure that you have the right gearing. So I'm gonna fast forward through the rest of the climb. It is very interesting, but in the interest of time, I want to get to the finish. You ideally still have your aero helmet that you picked up at the end of the Shisa sprint, because the Shisa sprint, just like the alley sprint, you picked up an aero helmet and you picked up points if you were the top 20 through the line, or the top or the fastest 5 through the line. And here's the last kilometer. The aero helmet only lasts 15 seconds, so you want to wait until you get to the straightaway, and you'll see that in a second. And lest we forget, the top 5 finishers are also going to get podium points. So just like fastest through the segment, we've got some additional points that come in at the end. So if you're looking at your team tactics, you probably want to think about the race in terms of who's going to score points in the segments, who's going to score finishing points, because everyone's going to get finish points, and who's going to be able to finish with that first pack. So there's lots of things to think about. I'll put the course notes in the description, along with a tactics discussion, which is there's individual and group tactics. And I think the most fun thing about this game is that you get to play a video game and do things differently than you would do them outside, while still training and connecting with the people in your community. So I hope you enjoy, and good luck on Tuesday.